After Capcom's Street Fighter II debuted in 1991, it was almost impossible to imagine another arcade title that could rival or top such a refreshingly fun game. That is, until 1 year later when the ultra-violent, ultra-bloody Mortal Kombat arrived and sent kids scrambling for quarters and launched the video arcade renaissance. Few could have predicted the special moves, fatalities, babalities, and more would launch such a legacy. But after this month's premiere of the new Mortal Kombat movie in theaters and on HBO Max, here we are. Get over here. This is Wayback Attack.
Welcome to Wayback Attack. My name is Brian Grantham, and sitting across the stage waiting for his fatality is Preston Burt. Preston, are you ready for a babality?
I prefer a friendship.
Oh, okay.
Let's throw a friendship down there. Let's have some rainbows and fun times.
Well, the newest Mortal Kombat had some really good friendships in it. So.
Oh, yeah. Sweet.
The new technology has made friendship even better.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Mortal Kombat, nothing like death and dismemberment bringing friends together.
Man, and really it has since the 94, I think, right? So
92.
92.
Yeah, 92.
It's crazy.
I know it's hard to keep up with. There have been so many iterations and reinventions and reboots and all this kind of stuff. And we're going to talk all about that, of course, because that is the topic of today's show.
Mm-hmm.
And most obviously because the new movie came out and we have both watched that and we were prepared to talk about that. And I will say we are going to talk about that and we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff, but we're going to save that for the end of the show. So we're going to have some fun chit chat and then we'll go into the history and the legacy before we talk about that. So if you need to bail, if you haven't seen it yet, if you need to bail, you're welcome to do so at the end of all that. But dude, I want to say first off, I know we're sitting the same distance, but in my heart we're closer because both of us are now fully vaccinated. Yeah. And it feels like the olden times are coming back.
I know, it's so exciting. The exciting thing about it, I think it was the CDC. I saw it today. It may have been something else, but they were talking about if you're going into a crowd with a bunch of randos, maybe still wear a mask.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have that the luxury of safety, I guess.
Oh yeah, totally. And just the relief of knowing like that you're not going to get your loved ones sick.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. I went and got a haircut at a professional haircuttery for the first time in over a year and a half. Yeah, I should put that camera right over here because look at this. It's beautiful.
You're so fresh and so clean, Preston.
I know, man. It was great. I ate in a Waffle House.
Putting it to the test.
Yeah, I ate with my friend Glenn in a Waffle House for the first time in over a year. That was fun. And I think we've talked about it on the show before, but it's really interesting. In the course of our show together, we didn't start the video until we were already in the middle of the pandemic.
Yep.
We actually sat at this desk recording just the audio only version before you'd gotten all the cameras and stuff. So it's pretty neat that now we have the freedom to be closer, but yet here we are still.
We can spit in each other's mouths now.
Breathe on me, baby.
But that's going to be Patreon only.
Oh yeah, that's some paid content right there.
Well,
too funny.
What before we get into the gory MK stuff, what have you been up to recently?
Recently I have been playing a new pinball machine that I got for the Southern Fried Gaming Expo, and so I'll talk about that a little bit on the Patreon episode as well. But I got a Last Action Hero. That's the giveaway game.
I love that game.
Yeah, so it's the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 90s, which is a fantastic movie that got a poor critical acclaim.
It is so crazy to me that it got poor critical acclaim because it was a perfect action movie, and then also because it was a comedy, it was perfect at making fun of basically of Arnold Schwarzenegger's career.
Oh yeah, totally.
It was so good.
It threw me off when I turned on the machine and it said, "I'll be back." because I forgot that he actually says that in the movie.
Yep.
So it's funny that they bring in the T2 element of it in the game as well.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. Other than that, not much else to report. So just I'm catching up on movies and things and able to watch Mortal Kombat. How about you? I know you went on vacation.
Yeah. So we went to up to Asheville, North Carolina, and we went to the Asheville Pinball Museum, and I played there. Basically, like they had a weird time. We weren't there right when they opened, but I think they're open from, let's say, noon to 5. Don't quote me on that, but we were there pretty much the whole time, and they have a ton of games. The cool thing about this place is they actually have a Hercules. They have a Humpty Dumpty
Playing with a cue ball.
Yeah, but they don't have Hercules turned on because the parts for that are next to impossible to get. And I don't know if normally they have Humpty Dumpty turned on. Because of COVID, every other machine was turned off, and so I think that the selection of games that they had were pretty cool. They also had a lot of arcade games. They only had 2 games you had to pay for. It's like a pay when you come in to get a wristband, because you can leave and come back if you want to. But yeah, there was a Willy Wonka. I think it was like 50 cents a play, and then they have a Star Wars sit down cabinet, and that is like 25 cents a play. And so everything else is set to free play. So we did that, and I'll go a little bit more into detail on it during the Patreon episode. And then also we went to let's see, boom baby, we went to Retrocade.
Cool.
And Retrocade's pretty awesome. I spent a lot of that night talking to the owner of that place, and they have like a bunch of pinball machines, and they actually have a virtual pen. And this is how we started talking. Is I've really been thinking a lot about getting a virtual pen lately, or maybe not getting one, but building one. Right now PC parts are so hard to get, and so I just like having to build a PC for it. I mean, I think right now, like I have extra PCs usually, but right now I think I'm using one for everything, like my Plex server, and then we made an office, so I used one of my old PCs for the office and stuff like that. So I might buy one and then just like upgrade it whenever PC parts become available. But so
I'm on the hunt on Facebook Marketplace for like an authentic like Windows 95, Windows 98 machine, so we can build it up and have a retro setup for SFGE.
Okay.
So if you're on the hunt, if you see one, let me know.
Yeah, you should. I don't even know. I was gonna say you should check like Goodwill and stuff, but I don't even know if you would be able to find something like that there, because nobody would want to buy it for the most part. I bet you can find it on eBay. You said you're looking on eBay.
No, I was looking on Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, Facebook. Look on eBay.
Okay.
Because I bet there's like people that would sell it for collectors.
Okay.
So
I'll look.
Hey, when you do, I got a whole like CD book of games from that era.
Classic.
So,
Classic. Yeah. Well, so usually our banter is not so game focused, but this is a gaming focused episode. I guess a movie focused episode as well, but it's all because of the game Mortal Kombat. Before we get into the history, am I
nope,
talking over you or anything?
Nope.
Okay, good. Before we get into the history of that and the legacy of that and all the good stuff and movie talk, do you remember your first exposure to Mortal Kombat?
I do.
Is there like a story behind the first time you ever saw it?
I specifically remember the first time I heard about Mortal Kombat, and I feel like maybe I may have told this before on here, but I don't know for sure. So it must have been picture day, because I know it was at school and we were in the lunchroom, but it wasn't lunchtime, and these kids were talking about this game, and they said, I walked in, right, and they went, oh, I'm sure Brian knows about it, because these were not like kids these were like the popular kids in school, and they were talking about this game, and they were like, oh, I'm sure Brian knows about it, because he loves video games. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh yeah, this game Mortal Kombat. And I was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And so they, oh yeah, man, like it's so bloody, and you like uppercut people and blood goes everywhere, and you can like rip people's heads off and stuff. And I was like, oh my god. And they're like, yeah, check out Diamond Gems, man, next time you go there, you should check out Diamond Gems. And
I love it.
I was like, okay, yeah, awesome, I'll check it out. And when I did go to Diamond Gems the next time, or the mall the next time, I went to Diamond Gems and checked it out and fell in love immediately. It was the best. And I think they eventually got one at Walmart also.
That's crazy that you, the video game expert,
I know,
that was even identified as a video game expert by your peers at that time already, had not played it before those, popular kids got to play it.
I lived on a farm at the time in the middle of nowhere, and so like all these other people lived in the city, and so they had easier access, I guess, to shopping. And they were the popular kids, so they were probably at the mall a lot, like going to Tommy Hilfiger and stuff like that.
I love how you are so intimately versed in Tommy Hilfiger that you call it Tommy Hilfinger. Yeah, that speaks volumes. So I asked you that question, but I don't really have a good story about my first time playing Mortal Kombat. Street Fighter 2, I don't know that I remember the specific instance, but I remember the shock and awe of that.
Right.
Of oh my gosh, this is an incredible game. I think because I had played a game that was so revolutionary like that, that Mortal Kombat as a game initially wasn't, mind-blowing, other than the fact that it was just super duper violent, and that was really, really, really cool. The memories that stand with me for that game are just the circumstances around where I got to play it most often. Is that I lived in a subdivision in a smaller town, and my subdivision had 3 entrances, and on one entrance there was the corner store gas station, and that corner store had a game room in the back, and that's where I played Street Fighter 2 and Terminator 2 pinball and all these kinds of things. Slugfest was there, and that's where I got to see all these great things. On the other end was Indian Lanes. It was across the street, and it was the bowling alley. And the bowling alley was the first place that had the Mortal Kombat. And my friend Todd and I played so much Mortal Kombat there. And, this was just like Street Fighter, you had the special moves, but this is before the internet. So you'd be writing down move combinations when friends figured out.
You talking about for Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, going to Game Pro magazine and stuff.
Well, actually, we'll go ahead and finish your story, but remind me.
And then, what I remember specifically about the bowling alley was that Todd's dad was the manager of the bowling alley. And so this would never happen now. But we rode the same bus to go home. And he would get dropped off at the bowling alley, and I would go to my house. But on certain days, I'd just go to the bus driver and say, hey, let me off with Todd. And I get dropped off from school at the bowling alley to go play Mortal Kombat. And I think we'd get some free tokens and stuff every now and then, too. So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, because you talking about the internet, that was another thing about, it was more specifically Mortal Kombat 2, because Mortal Kombat 1, I do remember playing at Diamond Gyms, and then one of the places that I took karate at the time, they had a Mortal Kombat machine. It was like a complex for a sports complex, and they had a Mortal Kombat machine, and then they also had a Twilight Zone, or a Addams Family, and a Next Generation pinball machine there also. But when Mortal Kombat 2 came out, that was the first game that I remember spending a lot of time specifically going to bulletin boards and stuff like that, because you would print out the move list and the fatalities. And it's funny because Ed Boon got really upset because I don't remember seeing any of the notes where we specifically talk about it, but Mortal Kombat was one of those games where they specifically hid things in it. In fact, Mortal Kombat 1 was the first game that had a hidden playable character that you had to unlock by doing a certain.
Was that Smoke?
It was
was it
Rain? Noops, I bought.
Oh,
Reptile. It was Reptile. I don't remember. It was one of the.
We
ninjas.
did a lot of research for this show.
It was a ninja, okay. So when 2 came out, Ed Boon wanted to put in a bunch of secret stuff. And he got mad because the internet was so popular. People figured everything out, shared the information on the internet. So there's so many revisions of Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 because they would change things like the moves. And it would, they would sell the new boards to the operators and be like, hey, the people are going to get tired of the old boards because they already know everything. So here's the new ones, and then they'll put in more money. So it made sense for them to buy that. But it's just crazy to think about how, the internet, that was the first game that I remember the internet impacting the way it did.
Yeah. I didn't use the internet. Like I said, I I would write down. I would catalog, what I could figure out for myself. Sometimes what GamePro would have. Sometimes people had moves around the bezel of the monitor. They would print out. But I compiled all of that in a text file on a electronic word processor,
Nice.
and saved it onto a 3.5-inch floppy. That's how I had my moves. I came across a printed off version of that recently. I was like, wow, all the work that went into this. Like when you can just go on the internet now and find anything you want.
Yeah, it'd be totally different now. Like,
and watch a video tutorial on how to do it.
Yeah, everyone having a phone in their pocket. Like, and nowadays, like, with Mortal Kombat 11, like, you could just go on there and just watch, like on YouTube, there's every fatality video. So you don't even have to play the game. You can just watch all the fatalities and be like, oh, this is great.
So those are our personal memories. But like we mentioned, the game itself came out in 1992, following the 1991 release of Street Fighter II, which, like I said, it like revolutionized and started off the arcade renaissance of all of it. It really was. I mean, before those two games, you played like Ikari Warriors or
Golden Axe.
Yeah, Golden Axe, Magic Sword,
Strider.
stuff like that. So there were platformers and there were shoot 'em ups and things like that, but just the revolutionary aspect of the head-to-head, the great equalizer. You could be, a 10-year-old kid with who spent a lot of quarters and knows what they're doing versus a grown adult person and wipe the floor with them. That was a great feeling. So that was really, really cool. And then so the game itself, 1992, Ed Boon, John Tobias. What I know because we wrote this together, but tell the fans, if they can't tell already, what was the inspiration?
All right. Well, the inspiration for the game, it still kind of lives in the game. They were thinking about coming up with a fighting game. They were working at Midway, and they were thinking about coming up with a fighting game. And, at the time, no one was bigger than Jean-Claude Van Damme. The muscles from Brussels, baby. And so they wanted to have a game that he was in. And all that fell through. They couldn't get him to be in it. And so they wound up going with more of a fantasy theme. And but they wanted to have that character still in the game. And so what they did is they made Johnny Cage, whose initials JC, just like Jean-Claude, and they basically modeled that character after Jean-Claude Van Damme in order to still like keep what they were trying to do and want to do that. Since it's so weird to think about like the inspiration for it being their love of Jean-Claude Van Damme, the actor, and how over time that franchise has grown out to not just be like the most like the biggest fighting game in history, like over time, but also just the property Mortal Kombat is like one of the biggest media properties of all time,
and almost more long-standing than Jean-Claude Van Damme's career.
I know
itself.
Well, he came back, with that Amazon show.
Did he?
I don't remember what it.
But yeah, when you look at him in Bloodsport and you look at the original Johnny Cage outfit, you can totally see the similarities there. The games in the arcade lasted for a while. Like you mentioned, they would have revisions on different boards. And I know I own a Mortal Kombat 3 in my arcade, which is awesome. When you start up with the game, it goes through the run and it starts showing you the ROM editions. It runs through the ROMs and shows you what revision you have. So not only did they do that, but of course they released sequels. So Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3, and 4 was the final one in the arcade before they went on to launch how many titles do they have now? So
in the mainline series, Mortal Kombat's gotten up to 11. And that one came out in 2019.
Okay.
It just had when you think about a fighting game, the last thing you think about is a story, right? And they just had last year this huge story DLC for it because like that game 9, 10, and 11 is probably like one of the best stories in video games, let alone a fighting game. And so with 11 they added story to the end of it, And then, one of the things that they've started doing in Mortal Kombat, which I'm not a huge fan of, is putting in like all these guest characters. So like this
Bo Jackson?
No,
Oh.
no, unfortunately. Maybe the next game will have sports stuff, because this one has like action movie stuff. So you have like the Terminator and Rambo and stuff like that,
okay.
right? And then and I think it was Mortal Kombat 10. It was horror themed. So you had an Alien and Predator and Jason, and Freddy was a 9 and stuff like that. Like,
Okay. Can I pitch you someone who should be in there?
Yeah.
I think next time they should do special hidden characters, Garbage Pail Kids.
Okay.
And you got like Messy Tessie
Uh-huh.
with like her snot powers. Like she could fling at you and sneeze on you and trap you in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got that dude that chucks all the time.
It would be actually, and those
It'd
characters
fit right in.
Yeah, those characters would be perfect for fatalities and everything too.
Wendy Winston.
Yeah.
blow you over.
They have also had like side things with Mortal Kombat. So like there's 11 main games, but there's a Mortal Kombat versus DC, and so it was right when eventually Midway went out of business and Warner Brothers bought some of their studios. And so that studio became NetherRealm Studios, and so they made that was like, now they make Injustice also, which is a different fighting game, which is just DC characters. But like that was like Mortal Kombat and DC coming together. But then there's also games like for the PlayStation 1, there was like these like side-scrolling games that it still controlled like Mortal Kombat, like it was like a brawler, but it was more story driven. So you played as Sub-Zero, and it was telling Sub-Zero's story. And then they came out with another one where you played as Jax, and it told like his story of like him going after the Black Dragon clan. And there was on PS2 and the original Xbox era, there was a game called Shaolin Monks, and you played as Liu Kang and Kung Lao, and it was the same type of deal. It was a brawler, but people love that game. Those other two games for the PlayStation 1 were not well received. It had FMV cutscenes and everything, the original ones. This one was all CG. And then there was supposed to be a sequel coming out called Fire and Ice. It was going to be a Sub-Zero and Scorpion game, but Midway says that like they couldn't get it under budget to where it needed to be, and so they just scrapped the whole thing. But like games for that, I feel there's probably also like how popular the game was. I'm sure there's like some like Windows 95 like CD game where it's like make cool pictures with your friends Sub-Zero and stuff like that,
So I got two questions for you.
Shoot.
First off is we talked about the different games that come out, and we mentioned earlier friendships and babalities, fatalities. What do you think was the over the not the game itself and not the concept itself, but over the course of its lifespan, what do you think the most interesting and creative and exciting addition was?
So I think the story, so the way the games break out, 1 through 3 are your classic 2D fighters. 4 had a 3D environment similar to like Tekken and stuff, right? And that game was not well received. The next 3 games that came out, so 5, 6, and 7, were console only, and those were still a 3D environment, but they started adding in like weapons. So like you had stance changes and stuff like that for every character, and those were okay. Like I actually spent a lot of time playing those games when I was in a band at one point.
What?
And we when we were in the recording studio, like the guy had I don't know, I may have brought an Xbox or he had an Xbox, and so like I played a lot of those. I don't remember which one it was. It was one of those games, and 5. I think it was probably 7, maybe 6. But anyways, and then
Or
8,
5 or 4.
No, I know it wasn't 4.
Oh, okay.
I know
Okay.
for
Come on.
but and then 8 was the Mortal Kombat versus DC. And so that was bringing us back to a more traditional style of game, because they got rid of the weapons and stuff. And then when 9 came out, it was a reboot for the whole series. And so they took the original story from the original arcade game, and the original movie. It was a story that people were familiar with, but they really fleshed it out. And I think that the way that they did that, it changed fighting games, because like before in a fighting game, when you play through a story, you pick Ken and you go through and you see the picture at the end where he gets with his girlfriend and stuff like that, or Ryu where he's uppercutting waterfalls right at the end. So like the way Mortal Kombat 9 worked is you would play as different characters. Like the story unfolded, and then like during this chapter you would be playing as this character, so you had to learn how to play each character, but it was only for like 3 or 4 fights before you went to a new character. So I think that the way that they like evolved that whole process of fighting games is probably was the most exciting addition to that game ever, because you know they still maintained like the core fighting game, like versus stuff all maintained the same, but it went back to 2D, which was the perfect. I hate 3D fighting games, and so it was the perfect comeback. 11 is like the perfect game. So.
Wow, that was a really well detailed and well explained answer that I did not intend for it to have that deep of a resonance with you. You can really tell when Brian knows his stuff. We pick a topic that he like is well versed in, because he can just go. I was gonna say it was when they added that button on 3.
The run button.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
you know, the run button is huge. Like that
game changer, bro.
Oh yeah,
game changer.
Man, like you know, Sub-Zero has always been my guy, and like my favorite thing in that game is like freeze someone, run up to them, and then it's high punch, low kick, high kick, back and high kick, and it's like a 36% damage.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, game changer. But I liked your answer too. Any answer that I can get for you to name drop that you were in a band. I mean, that's a good question right there.
Yeah.
All right, my second question is pick your fighter. Who's your fighter?
Sub-Zero, baby.
Okay.
All day.
All right.
Who's yours?
Sub-Zero. Do you prefer Ninja Zero, or do you prefer Space Stripe brother guy?
So
isn't that his brother?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the brother it just depends.
Well, here we go. Here we go.
Like so, it's the original Sub-Zero. Is who the guy with the face stripe is. I think. Mm-hmm. I think his brother took over the role. He died, and then his brother took over the mantle of Sub-Zero, and that's who it is in 2.
What? Yeah.
And then in part 3 is the original Sub-Zero's back.
I mean, of course.
So, but yeah, I think face stripe Sub-Zero is good, because they had to start differentiating. It couldn't just be palette swaps anymore, right? Like the games had to get bigger. You had to have better, and his costume was better.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I dig it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're the same, so I don't have any answer. Like Sub-Zero is my go-to, just like Chun-Li is my go-to on Street Fighter 2. So yeah, I try some of these now. I mean, like, even though I have it in my game room at home, like there's some characters that I never play as. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you how to do a single one of their moves, because I just never do that one. Whew. Well, moving on with the show, I think you did a little research about some cool stuff that Mortal Kombat paved the way for, rather.
Oh yeah, they did a great job at changing the world. You could say.
Every day, the news brings more and more images of random violence, torture, and sexual aggression right into our living rooms. Violence and violent images permeate more and more aspects of our lives. And I think it's time to draw the line. I know that one place parents want us to draw the line is with violence in video games. The fact is that a new generation of video games crosses that line, containing the most horrible depictions of graphic violence and sex, including particularly violence against women. Like the Grinch who stole Christmas, these violent video games threaten to rob this particular holiday season of a spirit of goodwill. Instead of enriching a child's mind, these games teach a child to enjoy inflicting torture. For those who have not seen these so-called games before, I want to show you what we're talking about. What you're about to see are scenes from 2 of the most violent new video games. First, we have Mortal Kombat, which is a martial arts contest involving digitized characters. We're going to show 2 versions of the game. In the first segment, which is Sega's version, blood splatters from the contestants' heads. When a player wins, the so-called death sequence begins. The game narrator instructs the player to finish, and I quote, finish his opponent. The player may then choose a method of murder, ranging from ripping a heart out to pulling off the head of the opponent with spinal cord attached. The second version, made by Nintendo, leaves out the blood and decapitation, but as you will see, it is still a violent game.
No one can start a party like Joe Lieberman.
Oh my gosh, that guy's a rager.
Well, on December 7th of 1993, and on March 5th, 1994, members of the combined United States Senate Committees on Governmental Affairs and the Judiciary held congressional hearings, or they held those hearings with several spokespeople for companies in the video game industry, including Nintendo, Sega, involving video games that had violence and sexuality in them, and how they perceived the impacts on the youth of America.
Those were simpler times, weren't they?
Yeah, man, like it was such a crazy time because people were so up in arms about it. Because it has been such a storied franchise. There have been so many video clips of fatalities played for the U.S. Congress.
Yeah,
like it's so crazy. I love that they specifically talked about the two different ports for the arcade game.
Yeah, that was interesting that they differentiated between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that though, because you had to get the bloody version. You couldn't get the
So Sega did a smart thing, and of course they omit this in this. You actually didn't have blood out the box with the Genesis. You had to type in a code to unlock it. It was ABACAB, ABACAB.
Oh, I did that though. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so once that happened, then you had the blood again. But yeah, dude, Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo was the worst version because the Genesis one played more like the arcade game, and then you also had the blood stuff, whereas like the Super Nintendo one looked better, but it didn't play as well. And then
Super Nintendo, you had to go to your friend's house to Super Nintendo for Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, and then you had to go to your friend's house with the Genesis to play Mortal Kombat.
Or you could just be me and have both.
Oh, whoa, Daddy Warbucks.
Hyper Fighting, I played that. In fact, you and I just played that again recently, and I beat Preston for the first time ever in Street Fighter 2. I was so excited.
It was the worst day of my life.
So basically, these hearings were a result of concerns raised by members of the public in 1993 because of a game called Night Trap for the Sega CD, which recently has been remastered for modern day PC games.
Yeah,
that game is so bad. But the real problem with that game was not the content in the game. Like it was a full motion video game for the Sega CD, and it had girls in like their 90s and stuff. But really the thing that drove home was the cover art, and it's very similar to like the cover art of the first Nightmare on Elm Street, where they wound up cutting the bottom off because it was too like revealing.
Risque.
Yeah, and so they did the same thing for that. And then out of these congressional hearings was born a couple things. So the video game industry created the Interactive Digital Software Association. Now it's called the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association. And then in 1994, they created the ESRB, which is the rating system.
That's what we have today.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, this is the same time period that parental explicit lyrics and parental warning started popping up on albums because of Prince and his dirty mind, and Dee Snider and his rebelliousness. I'd like to think of Ed Boon and Dee Snider would probably be great friends.
Yeah.
Shaping the way of American laws. So
that's crazy. Yeah, so the ESRB is what you see on the boxes now, where it has E for everyone or M for mature.
It's very convenient, and I as far as that stuff, my kids don't play games that I really have to look into that stuff. But I talk to people all the time about it, and like there's an ESRB app, and it'll like explicitly this is what's in the game. And the ESRB is actually a pretty interesting thing. Like they just have like random people, and so basically if I'm making a game, right, and I want it to be rated, because you don't have to get everything rated, but for it to be sold in retail you do, and if I want to make a game, I take all the worst things in it and I create a video clip of it. I submit it to the ESRB. The ESRB has randos watch these clips and then decide what they think. Oh, they had like this is in it, and
like the MPAA, except it's just randos.
Yep. Yep.
Interesting.
So
I was looking on here. I didn't see it, but in my arcade warehouse raids before, I have actually come across posters that they would hang in the arcade that would have little depictions of what the different ESRB ratings were. And I don't remember them having, like, they might have had stickers that they applied to marquees in the actual arcade to apply those ratings. So it wasn't just the home consoles that got them; it was the arcade releases as well.
Yeah, and you know the ESRB, like the rating system, has changed through time. So before the ESRB was formed, you had stuff that it would say like K to A, like kids to adults. You know, like there was like they were kind of like testing out a different rating system before it was like institutionalized, and it's not a government requirement, right? Like it is something that was created in order to prevent the government from stepping in and
like the
regulating
Comics
it.
Code Authority.
So it's that type of thing. So,
well, speaking of something that needs government intervention, don't we have something else that Mortal Kombat inspired to?
Yes.
Let's take a look at that.
You've played it. You've watched it. Now, live it. Mortal Kombat, the live tour, coming soon.
So people talk a lot about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming out of their shell tour, and the songs and the performances and the music. This was a blip on my radar. I did not remember this existed until we were doing this show.
You know, it's also crazy because there's no recordings. They must have been like hardcore, like no cameras allowed, because there's no recordings on YouTube of like a live show.
Yeah.
But man, like I feel like during this time period, everything had a live show. You know, like everything on ice and just stuff like that. So
yeah, well, and I know you could have some elements of this with the Ninja Turtles, but it's a lot harder to do ninja moves in a ninja costume like a turtle. But you know, this lent itself to live performance because it's basically just a martial arts demonstration, which people already did. Like that was already a thing just with traditional martial arts, with Taekwondo and karate and stuff like that. But this, of course, had the theme and the costumes and the story. So it's really cool. I think where this fell by the wayside as compared to the Ninja Turtles is because it had the Ninja Turtles had the video cassette.
Yes.
And I don't think they ever released a VHS tape of this.
Yeah, no. There was no like official production. And you know, like the crazy thing is with this performance, the show, it toured hardcore. And you know, it had when it first came out, it was at the Radio City Music Hall on September 14th, 1995. And then after that, it did a 200-city road trip into 1996. And so, like, they burned through so many different performers, like, in this. I didn't do a list of them because it's literally, like, 30 people that were through it. But there are some cool things about it. You had the guy who played Jax in this live performance.
I was going to ask, did any of the game actors actually perform live?
None of the game actors were in this, which is shocking to me because the game actors would do a lot of promo stuff like at E3 or I guess it was CES back then. But they would do like a lot of promotional stuff there where they would be in costume. I mean,
they could legit do the moves and stuff. They were the models.
And the lady that played Sonya Blade, she still is like, I don't think I follow her on Twitter, but because of the movie, like I've been seeing her stuff. Like she still has the outfit, and she can still like she's still super buff and stuff. And she's like, I want to be Sonya. Like she doesn't look like she's aged a day since 1994.
Wow.
And so, and she was like, I should have been Sonya Blade, but. So yeah, it's weird that they weren't in this live performance. But the first Jax that they had, his name was Hakeem Alston. He was in the movie.
Okay.
And he was just some random like outworlder that was defeated by Liu Kang. And then the fight coordinator for the live show was actually Shang Tsung. It was Kerry Tagawa, who played Shang Tsung in the movie. And then, that was also one of the cool things about the new game is he was like the first unlockable character. It was that person, Tagawa, was in the new Mortal Kombat as Shang Tsung. So it was really cool.
That's awesome. I know you if you're watching the show, you got to see a little clip of the trailer. But if you look online, there's actually a little bit of the show in this same clip. It's like a 6.5 minute clip. But also my favorite part is the live performance on KTLA,
Yes.
where basically they took the show on the road, and they have to hit up different local media stations, news stations, to get the word out. And so you got all these guys in their Mortal Kombat outfits providing morning entertainment for moms shooing their kids off to school. It's crazy. It's just it's so random. Is it the guy's dressed as Nightwolf? Oh my gosh, he looks insane.
Yeah, man, I wish this thing had to make bank.
Yeah,
because Mortal Kombat hype was huge. It wasn't just the game. You had the album. Like in the latest issue of Retrofied, I talk a little bit about the Mortal Kombat album. But like that was such a even at that time, so fresh in the history of this game, it was hitting on so many levels that like, I just couldn't imagine. I would love to have seen that. I would have totally been into it. I was in karate at the time. Yeah. I totally would have loved it.
I wish they would take that on tour right now and do a mall tour and like make it retro, right? And you bring out the costumes from the 90s, you go to the malls that are dying, and you get to watch the Mortal Kombat live stage show. I would pay so much money to see that.
Do you think the actors would feel like
demoralized?
Yeah, like
probably.
Like, oh, you were on a mall tour in 2021, please.
Probably, but hey. So that's all fun and good. And what's crazy about this is that, like we mentioned, everything's so hyper violent, but yet it's all being marketed to kids. And they know where their bread's buttered. And one of the best ways to get kids to love a property is to make some toys about it.
Prepare yourself for combat. Mortal Kombat action figures. Fight for right in your own tournament of champions. Liu Kang. Johnny Cage. Raiden. Get over here. Sub-Zero. Reptile in the Dragon MK1. Kano on the Combat Cycle. Mortal Kombat. It's not just a game anymore. Mortal Kombat action figures. Combat Cycle comes with Kano. Dragon MK1 comes with Reptile.
You talk about a story. I want to know where the story is where these dudes are running around on their motorcycles and their dragon boats and stuff. When do the vehicles come into play? I want Reptile to have a special move in MK4 where his motorboat comes and rams your ass and explodes you with propeller.
Well, this game, even the first game in the arcade, had a pretty rich story. Like on the track screen, it would cycle through. So maybe they just kind of skipped over these vehicles, but I'm sure they were there.
Yeah. Well, all right. So 1994, Hasbro released the Mortal Kombat action figures, which were essentially part of the G.I. Joe line, but unofficially. Like, I totally conflated the two because I think it didn't help because G.I. Joe did release, with the G.I. Joe branding, Street Fighter 2 or Street Fighter action figures. You could get Guile and Blanca and Ryu and all those guys. And they were in the 3 3/4 inch figures. But they also released these that were only branded as Mortal Kombat. Did you ever have any of these?
I never had them. At the time, I wasn't buying stuff like that. But I do remember seeing them because I always went by KB in the mall, and check stuff out. So I do remember, because like when we were doing this, I watched the commercial and I was like, oh God, I feel like I would have had this. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, well, no, like at that time I just wasn't buying figures. So
yeah, I too, like the toy line. I still love G.I. Joe, but the toy line really lost me when they stopped having characters that were on a cartoon. I mean, because they stopped having a cartoon. And so they're putting out, figure after figure. I'm like, who is this jackalope? And then they started having those giant missiles and like huge bazookas that actually shot. And like, it was cool that it could shoot, but at the same time, it looked ridiculous. It didn't look anything like an army figure or anything. So, and I was aging out, so I didn't have any of that. Some of my friends had the Street Fighter, but I don't think really anybody had of my friends, just because I was older. I didn't have the Mortal Kombat. But it's cool looking at those figures because you can look at them, and while yes, they did have some custom molds, you can still look and see, oh, Sonya Blade's body is totally Jinx.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, there's Storm Shadow's body, there's Snake Eyes' body, and the way they you know, kit bash basically to get the new figure. So
I'm surprised the vehicles weren't just repurposed Joe figures.
oh, I'm sure they
vehicles,
are. I'm
so.
sure they are. I don't know, or maybe they had it down the line. But you know, that's the toy business, because like we saw, like Battle Cat from He-Man was just a repurposed Action Jim Tiger or whatever, and they doing it all over again with Mortal Kombat. So chasing that money, getting kids hooked on a game they can't play because it got rated M for mature.
Yeah. I also love that. So, like, I feel like everything that is associated with Mortal Kombat so far, the commercial we've done, it's like, it's more than the game.
Yeah.
Like, you've played the game, now here's this. So, but, you know, the cool thing about the toys is there's a new toy line, a new Mortal Kombat toy line, and McFarlane's making them now. And, you know, I feel like McFarlane's quality had dropped off for a little bit. I feel like they started spinning. The toys that are selling right now is all Fortnite and Roblox and stuff like that. But like, I feel like this new Mortal Kombat line is actually really, really good, and it looks just like the characters from 11 because that's what they're doing. And so, but I think it's cool like that they still have, like, you know, you had the toy line from back then because of course, why not? Like, there was an animated series, you know, like, but nowadays without cartoons that everybody's watching, there's no like marketing tie-in. So, but it's cool that they still have like the toy line to go with the game, even though it came out like a year after the game came out. So
yeah. Well, before we give a little talk about the movie, don't drop off just yet, folks who haven't seen the movie. I did want to talk about Mortal Kombat's inspiration for other properties and one of my favorites.
yes.
So obviously it was a key that Mortal Kombat was hyper violent.
Yes.
And people realized that there could be money to be had with hyper-violent video games, but not the same care was placed into making some of these than others. So Brian and I each have a pick for our most favorite violent video game ripoff, and I'm going to go with Time Killers. And that's still me. Got it.
There we go. All right, for reals this time.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
Well, that's not really a very compelling audio clip if you're just listening, because it's just and then perfect. Because there's not like a trailer or anything compelling for Time Killers, because it's such a bad game. But I loved it.
I did.
I loved it
too.
unironically when I was a kid. I mean, it was clunky and dumb, but you could cut people's arms and heads off with a chainsaw.
And you could keep fighting if your arm had been cut off.
I know.
The cool thing I thought about this game too was the ability. So it had 5 buttons similar to Mortal Kombat, right? But it was both arms, both legs, and the head. And so, because sometimes your arms were cut off, and the only way to fight was by headbutting people or kicking people. But if you also used it to attack that way, or to attack those parts, and so you could just end a fight like instantly by cutting someone's head off if you landed the right.
Yeah, it's like a super move that you could try, but you could block that. So it had, I mean, to use the term realistic graphics for Mortal Kombat is pretty generous, but you know,
it was
if you could
digitize people.
Yeah. So Mortal Kombat was like digitized people, more realistic. Street Fighter 2 was more cartoony. Time Killers was definitely on the more cartoony side of things. Heck, you could play as a praying mantis called Mantaz. So it didn't have that. It didn't have the leg up on Mortal Kombat for that, but it did have the leg up on Mortal Kombat for just like absurdity of violence. Yes, it was more cartoony, but man, you know, where do you go from Mortal Kombat except to go to that and still be able to be a kid-friendly game?
Yeah.
I mean, kid friendly in loose quotes.
And at least they could say, hey, it's cartoon violence. Like it's not real people like Mortal Kombat is. So like it's more funny.
Yeah. And the game itself was like, the reason it's called Time Killers is because the different characters are from different points in time, and so they associated each character with a specific look and gimmick based on their time. They had like Rancid and Lord Wolf, and then you could get to the end and fight Death.
Yeah, it
was awesome.
Did you ever beat it?
I probably did.
I don't ever recall beating it. It was a fairly hard game.
But that was one of the games where, like, it was the rage at my local arcade. But I didn't see anybody else talking about it. It didn't get the cultural, cachet that Mortal Kombat did, and I had honestly forgotten about it until I came across a game in the warehouse raid. I was like, oh my gosh, there was that game that you could cut the arms off of people. It was so good. But then I got the board set and I was like, not as good as I remember.
Yeah, also when that game came out, like at Diamond Gems, I remember exactly where it was in the lineup, and it was never like in a prominent area. Like Mortal Kombat was like on an end cap, or that kind of thing, and like this was just in the middle of like some other random games.
Yeah. So go check out Time Killers on YouTube if you've never heard of that title or played that title. It's a hoot. It's great.
Yeah, it is. I love that game. So the game that I wanted to talk about is called Bloodstorm, and it is. I'm not really going to talk about the game so much as the drama around the game, and so it's considered by most to be like the spiritual successor to Time Killers. It's very similar gameplay, that kind of thing, but the drama here lies in with the promotions for this game. So it was actually the guy that played Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. His name was Daniel Pesina, and he played Johnny Cage and then also the ninjas. And when those games went to console, or when the first one went to console, he felt like he was screwed out of money because he didn't make royalties for his likeness for being on the console versions of the games, and so he left Midway and sued them, right? And so when Bloodstorm was coming out, it was being developed by people from it, like some people that had left Midway, and so they reached out to him and they were like, hey, you want to help us promote this new fighting game that we're making? And he was like, yeah, all right, let's do that. So he didn't just promote the fighting game. He promoted it as, I'm Johnny Cage and I endorse this game. Screw Mortal Kombat. And so the picture is him playing the arcade game, and it's not exactly Johnny Cage stuff, but it specifically says on the flyer, Daniel Pesina, who starred as Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat, has switched to Bloodstorm, and there were multiple.
It's signed with his name on there, so it doesn't say that he is. It doesn't. They're using the realism of how he looks like the character, because he is. To sell the game as Johnny Cage, but they're legally it's Daniel Pesina. Yeah. So
and they did all this when they were developing Mortal Kombat 3 and just trying to just kind of screw over screw over Midway and be like, we're the next big game in town.
Does Bloodstorm have a wolf in it?
I think you're thinking of Saberwolf from Killer Instinct.
Oh, okay. I don't remember this game at all. I don't remember Bloodstorm at all.
I don't remember the game either. But
but cool story.
Yeah.
Cool time.
I just think it's hilarious that that was the cool thing about Mortal Kombat, was that it was digitized actors, so it was like real video. And like at the time you'd go, video games are never going to look better than this because it's video, it's real people, And so it's just funny that like how likeness rights, like that was never an issue for arcade games before that. Maybe I don't know. There's maybe in China or something. There's like some famous person on a mahjong game or something, But this is the first big drama for an arcade game for video likenesses.
So we could go on and on and on. There were comic books. There were cartoons. There's been a bunch of movies, but we're gonna let folks who haven't seen the brand new movie drop off right here. This is your spoiler warning for Wayback Attack, because we're gonna be talking about the brand new movie that we both have seen, Mortal Kombat, in HBO Max and in theaters. So you've been warned.
Yes.
All right. So the movies, they did better than I thought they did. Before we talk about the new movie, I thought we'd talk a little bit about the old one. in that it came out in 1994. It had 1995. It had an $18 million budget and worldwide gross $122 million.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And of course, it spawned that, the great soundtrack and that Mortal Kombat theme that was playing. God, that's the soundtrack that I associate to my 10th grade year because you had to get to school early to get a parking lot, a space in the parking lot, and people just stand around their cars, hanging out, and blast music. And Mortal Kombat was played so much, like first day one, all the way through. That's the soundtrack to my 10th grade year. But yeah, it was huge.
So what's crazy about that movie? $18 million budget. It was so shaky when they were filming this movie. The they didn't have the money for a lot of the things that they were doing, and so Christopher Lambert played Raiden. Sweetheart that he is, he actually paid for a lot of the food for the actors and gave the actors money because these people they weren't getting paid a lot of money for this movie when they were filming it, and so he actually helped fund the actor side of the movie. So
that is cool. Well, it wasn't so much of a gravy train, and I think that has to do with a little bit of the quality of the movie. So when they came out with Mortal Kombat Annihilation 2 years later in 1997. They'd upped the budget to $30 million, but I mean, in the scheme of things, that wasn't huge.
Right. And it's crazy to think how much money the first one made and that they only raised it to $30 million.
Yeah. But I guess either there was oversaturation, the interest in the game had run out.
It was just a bad movie.
And most importantly, it was a bad movie.
With bad CG, bad visual effects.
So it didn't even come close to the $122 million that Mortal Kombat 1 did, and it only grossed $51 million worldwide. I think it only barely covered its budget in the US. And so that left dormant Mortal Kombat for a long time until cultural relevance came back with a vengeance in 2020 with Mortal Kombat Legends, Scorpion's Revenge. It's a cartoon animated series or show.
Yeah, there was also a series that was an internet series that came out that helped get people excited for a live action movie. Also, so.
Yeah. And then now, of course, in 2021, we got the awesome version that we got. Yeah. Well, I'll say it's awesome. What did you think?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's I think about a lot of times when there's a remake being made of a movie or something like that, and they change so much about it, and I go, why even remake the movie if you're changing so much? Just make it a new movie, right? And so when it comes to video game movies, I go, okay, well, how much fan service is going to be in it? And usually people look down on stuff like that, but to me, if you're not putting fan service in, why even call it the Mortal Kombat?
Totally.
Right? And man, they nailed it. There's a bunch of stupid things like Kano being Kano wins, ha ha ha, and stuff like that. But man, they did the leg sweep thing. That was one of the things in Mortal Kombat 2. Just hold back and low kick, and then you can leg sweep someone over and over and over.
It was so good.
Yes,
it was so good.
I loved it. I thought they did a great job with it.
Yeah. I was talking to another friend who, you talk about a fine line between fan service and an originality, and they had some things that were not true to the game, of course, like Reptile being an actual creature instead of one of the ninjas, and I'm like, I defend that, because the focus needs to be on Sub-Zero and Scorpion. They're dressed very similarly. You throw in a Reptile guy that looks like that, you got to have a whole other thing. It gets confusing, and this just elevates the Outworld.
Yes,
Outrealm. To being able to host fantastical creatures and stuff.
Right.
So you got Goro over there looking all crazy. You got Reptile Dude over here. No, I thought it was great. My review that I posted on Twitter was that this is the best 1990s action movie, B movie that was ever released in 2021 I've ever seen. It was perfect. It was perfect in that it was everything that I expected and everything that I wanted.
Yeah.
Marvel has done a really good job of elevating the source material, right? It's comic books. It's dumb. It's silly stuff. But they add an element of, fanfare and majesty and serious elements to it.
people are not afraid to be typecast as superheroes anymore because of it.
Right. This one, it's just cheese, you know? It doesn't ascribe to be anything that it's not.
Right.
And they lean into it. They give the fans what they want. And it's great. And I love that they're not shoehorning in some like famous person.
Yeah.
I like that you're able to disassociate, reality from fiction, because you can just go right into this being, I don't know who this guy is. It's just some 90s movie I picked off the VHS rental shelf, and I'm just enjoying it, just with better special effects.
Yeah. I was surprised that they killed off as many people as they did.
Yeah.
Because sure, Mortal Kombat has a huge roster of characters. But like when I first heard about the movie and heard that the main character is new for the movie, I was like, why? Like, that's so, like, there's so many people in Mortal Kombat. And so with that, like, that's going to change the story of Mortal Kombat. And like I said earlier, Mortal Kombat has such an amazing story. But then I was like, I don't want to watch like that story again. Like you just had that play out over the course of 3 games. So I think it's cool that they did that. They talk about like their superpowers, like the people that have the mark of Mortal Kombat, like something traumatic has to happen to them in order for them to get their special moves. And I think that the main character's special move was kind of dumb. I swear there's a superhero that gets stronger, or it's not Hulk. Obviously the Hulk fits this thing, but I feel like there's somebody else that has a suit that takes damage and makes them stronger.
Yeah, I can't think of it right now, but I know. Yeah, you're exactly right.
But that's a weird superpower to get.
I kept watching that, and admittedly, I had not been that huge into Mortal Kombat after basically my teenage years, and so I kept wondering, like, is this some character they introduced in like Mortal Kombat 8? Am I supposed to know this guy? The main character. So I'm glad to know that no, he's just some new guy for the thing. One of the main arguments against the movie that I have seen are people who are upset that it doesn't follow a tournament style. What do you say to that?
Well, so I feel like that's fine because they specifically address it in the movie, right? Like in the tournament, certain rules have to be followed, and so when Shang Tsung attacks Earthrealm, like he specifically said, like, because Raiden says that, like, no, like we have to fight in a tournament, and he says this has nothing to do with the tournament. I'm allowed to attack Earth whenever I want. This has nothing to do with that. And then they make it one-on-one fights when, like, because they're like, hey Raiden, you can teleport anybody, right? And he's like, yeah. And so they're like, well, just teleport us. I'll fight this person. They'll fight this person. They make it one-on-one fights. So I was fine with that.
Yeah, that was awesome. I thought it worked really well, and I think to your point earlier about just seeing the same story, I think it being a derivation from just okay, let's go to the tournament, let's fight, was really, really cool, and that leaves it open for part 2, which they tease with Johnny Cage.
Yes.
So maybe they will have that tournament aspect in the next one in Hollywood. Who knows?
Did you see Who Wants to Be Johnny Cage?
No.
The Miz on Twitter tweeted at Ed Boon and was like, I should be the one that plays Johnny Cage. I'm the perfect person for it.
I can see it.
Yep.
I can see it.
Totally.
I was like,
yeah, he would be the perfect person for that. So
yeah. All right. So favorite character and favorite death scene, or favorite fatality, I should say.
Why don't you go first? Because I have to think about it.
Okay. So favorite character for me was Kano.
Yes.
I saw a funny meme that someone had. It was like it made it look like a special report from the BBC or something. And it's like, actor who plays Kano reportedly in hospital after carrying the entire movie on his shoulders.
Yeah. He was great. I think that they did a really good job with Sub-Zero. And so I'm going to go with him. He's my boy. I have to back Sub-Zero. All right. What was your favorite fatality?
Before I get into that, comments on the chat, they do remind us that you're thinking of Black Panther's suit.
That is what I'm thinking of.
So yeah, good call. Thanks guys. Favorite fatality? I don't know. I'm always up for a good just sawing in half. Who did he do that to? Who did Kung Lao do that to?
That also was just a
forget.
character for. It was the flying lady. She was just a character for the movie also.
Yeah, I loved his razor blade hat, his hat death. And going back to my previous question though, shout out though to the guy who played Cabal. Mm-hmm. I really like the guy who played Cabal, and I could have watched that character for a while, but it doesn't look like he'll be making a return to part 2 because of that awesome fire dragon death. From, who was it? Liu Kang?
Yep. Yeah. The I liked. I thought I was gonna hate Goro because, hey, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle version of Goro in the first movie, like is like my Goro. You know, like Christopher Lee uses my Superman. But when I first saw Goro in this, I was like, oh, he's kind of sharp and he's a little too skinny. But his death scene's pretty dope. So
yeah.
He gets sliced up and disemboweled and stuff like that. So it's pretty nice. It's not an official fatality because he's killed by somebody not from the games. But I think they did a good job like representing actual fatalities. It would have been great if they had done a friendship or a babality when they were training. I think that would have been like the perfect opportunity to be able to like throw in one of those because it was like good guys fighting good guys. So, and I think that would have been a cool like nod. But I think the thing that made me laugh out loud in that movie the hardest was the leg sweep scene. So.
Yeah, that was great. So, do you have anything more to say about the movie?
I think it's awesome that this movie was I don't remember who the director's name is, what his name is, but it was his first movie that he made.
Guy.
Oh, he's only directed commercials before this. So.
That's great. He's got a long career ahead of him. Then, if he could pull this off and make it entertaining and fun and good. I will say though, if like I said earlier, if you're expecting like super duper, Oscar worthy movie, stay away. But lead into this with like the best. Robot jocks, watch some of those 90s movies, and then just imagine you're picking this up off the new release wall at the video store, and you'll be in hog heaven.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm excited to see where it goes from here because the first Mortal Kombat movie was good also, and then it just flopped with the second one. So hopefully they're able to maintain the same excitement and everything for the second one. So
yeah, well, legacy properties are paying the bills these days, so I bet they will continue to do so.
Yep.
And if you want to help us be a legacy property, you can visit us on Patreon. We are at patreon.com/Wayback Attack, and we're actually going to be recording a bonus episode of the show right after this episode of the show, and we'll talk more fun stuff. And you can hear every month one bonus show in addition to the 2 that you already get to hear for free. So check that out. And where can they find you and the show, Brian?
You can find me at BE Grantham on Twitter and the show at Wayback_Attack. Shoot us an email at waybackattackshow@gmail.com. And then where can people
I
find
am
you?
at Squared Stiff on Twitter and elsewhere. And you can always find us on YouTube and wherever. You can email us. We love to hear from you. But most importantly, we thank you for listening and watching the show. And we'll be back here in 2 short weeks to talk about more crazy retro goodness.
See you then.
Peace.